All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today, this Technical Tuesday, we're going to be talking about a very timely issue topic, I should say, of multi-timeframe analysis. And why is it so timely? The reason why it's so timely is because the market is starting to rebound. We pop over to the daily charts of the indexes, and let's zoom out a little bit on each of them. You can see that each of them bottomed just a day or two ago and have started to make a U-turn here. And you have that U-turn on the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Russell, the NYSE, the Dow, and even if we come over here to the IBD 50 as well, they all have that U-turn, right? And so there's the main topic for today is multi-time frame analysis, but you could even see on each one of these indexes too that each one of them are doing similar moves. They're not identical, but they are similar. So that's something that we want to take and put in our back pocket, because when we start to see similar moves or similar types of setups, that tends to lead or suggest or be a sign of as something that's of an impending change in direction. And we saw that here on the follow through today, and it actually began a little bit yesterday with the Russell and even the NYSE and the Dow a little bit. If we come over to the other time frames, right, and so you could see the weekly charts of the indexes here. They're still in downtrends. Right? You have an inside week, maybe, but you're still in downtrends on all of them. And similarly, over here on the monthly time frames, what do we have? We have downtrends to sideways trends, right? I would actually say that at this point here, right, because the only one that I would have suggested was in an actual downtrend was the Dow, because the Dow had undercut not one but 2 months of lows. It's rebounded enough to where you would look at this action here and it's sideways versus being in a steady downtrend. So the point and the purpose of doing a multi-time frame analysis is to look for confluence. Do we observe the same trends across time frames? Do we see a potential support level by looking closer at different time frames, or what exactly are we seeing? For this month here, when we started to make this U-turn on each of the indexes, what happened? Well, what was this here? What were these lows? Well, the month wasn't completed, but each one of them so far was at least April's low, right? Like that's not that big of a deal. But what's a little bit more bigger of a deal is that it was fairly close to other support levels on a monthly time frame. Right? You have the prior chart highs on the S&P. There wasn't that much on the NASDAQ. Perhaps this prior high from July. On the Russell, you had it getting close to the 36 month. On the NYSE, you had it getting close to the prior all-time high. On the Dow, it was getting close to the prior all-time high. So when we start to look for different levels across time frames, that can help us gauge when price might find a level. So if price is going down like it was on the indexes for a period, it can help us find a spot where price will pause and either one, continue a downtrend, or two, make its U-turn. Now, what would suggest it doing one versus doing the other? What can help is taking a look at what stocks are actually doing and how stocks are set up. Yesterday, I wrote that we're likely in the chop zone at the very least, and the reason why is because there were a bunch of stocks that looked kind of like this here, where you're pulling into a support area or you're starting to round something out. That one's near a support area. This is near a support area. That was near the 50. That one was near the 21. But we don't know what's going to happen the next day, right? If it fell through support, we would be having a slightly different conversation. But at this point, it's fairly easy to see where price pulled back over here, found support at that red line, the 50-day moving average. That's important because many stocks do find support at the 50-day moving average. It gets support here again, pulls back, gets support there again, and depending what happens on the next day, we could say that, yes, it continued to hold. Here's another one. Spotify. Spotify reported earnings, was it this morning or last night? This morning. And so far is up about 15%. It too came back to the 50-day moving average and rallied. If we're looking at stocks on different time frames, we could start to observe different things here. Let's see over here. This is a weekly chart. I don't know. Yeah, that looked a little funky. Now we've got this as a weekly. So you can see over here too, right? When price came down, what was price testing last week? Price was testing the 10-week line and was able to rally off of there. On yesterday and the day before, pulled back to the 50-day moving average and rallied from there. This starts to become important too, and let's get this back to a 30-minute time frame. Because when we're looking for stocks that are setting up, it's helpful to see them setting up not just on a weekly chart or a daily chart or even a 30-minute time frame if that's your thing. It's good to see it setting up on 2 to 3 time frames where you could easily spot the setup that you're looking for. Let's take a look at this one here in app. This one had pulled back to the 10-week line last week. Yesterday, it had pulled back to the 50-day moving average. And if we take a look at this chart over here on the 30-minute, you can see how it's pulling back to and coming into that 50-day moving average, right? Because this red line here, I have it set up to showcase the 50-day moving average, even though this is a 30-minute chart. If we zoom in on it, we can see how it approached the 50-day. Take a look at the volume on how it approached it. That's at about 11 o'clock. All right, price is starting to rebound off of it, and volume remains fairly low until it gets back up to this prior level right here, right? And if I turn on the annotations that I had, Let's reset this. You can see that this level here is fairly important. And because, well, what did price do? Price came down, it tested the 50-day moving average. It developed a short-term resistance level, an advanced pivot, if you will, right here. It did that how? It did that by coming down, coming back up, and then down. And so when it moves back up and then moves down, this area here starts to become a potential pivot area. And price hung below that area for more than a day. If we take a look at this over here, just this area, right, where my cursor is, that's price action was around that level Friday, late morning, early afternoon. So when we're starting to think of an advanced pivot area, does this advanced pivot area work not just on one time frame? And often you'll find an advanced pivot area that'll work on an intraday basis. You don't want it to only work on an intraday basis. You want it to work on both an intraday basis and a daily basis, because that's where we tend to find more power coming through this. And part of the reason why you get more power coming through is because it works on multiple time frames. So over here, it's below this level for a day and a half. And then today it's able to pop out. Something else that's noteworthy too is, where would we place a stop loss on this? We would place it down here. Okay, let's turn off the annotations again for a second. We would place it below yesterday's low. Why would we place it below yesterday's low? The reason why isn't just because 50-day moving average. That's a popular thing to think. It's what I used to think all the time, but there's more going on here than just the 50-day moving average. Sometimes the 50-day moving average is great, sometimes it's not. Here's why. When the 50-day moving average is at its best, you typically have multi-time frame support going on around it. When you take a look at this here, you don't just have the 50-day moving average. This is also potentially the weekly low. It's also, if you take a look to the left, there's a potential support area back here. If I turn on the annotations again for a second, you can see that there's an anchored VWAP that happens to coincide with that area from earnings. There's actually two anchored VWAPs from this chart. There's one from earnings and there's one from this other huge volume bar. And it just so happens that it maps out support and resistance area on this 30-minute time frame exactly. Any questions so far?
Like when you start to do the multi-time frame analysis, do you do what IBD or Bill O'Neill suggested, which is now on the weekly?
Good question. So, do I start on the weekly? The real answer is it depends. It depends on really. It depends on the routine that I'm running. So if I'm running my weekend routine, where I have a full week's worth of data that I'm dealing with, then I tend to start on the weekly and go down to the daily and then go down to the intraday time frames. And I'm only and I'm making a progression, right? So I'm looking at a weekly chart. Do I see something on the weekly chart that I like? Yes, great. Go take a look at the daily. Do I see something that looks good on the daily? Yes, great. Go down to the 30-minute. It's not where I see something on the weekly and then I'm immediately dropping down to the intraday time frame. There's a progression there. So why change that? Today's Tuesday. If we're starting in the middle of the week, a weekly bar is not yet complete. So we might find setups that are actually valid on a daily chart, but they're not yet quite complete if we're considering a weekly. So for example, yesterday, let's stick with app. Yesterday, app came down to the 50-day moving average and it rallied on the day, right? A potential bounce off of the 50-day. We don't know what it's going to do yet, but it did come down to the 50-day moving average and it closed near the high of its day, thereby showing that, hey, potential support. Volume wasn't that great, but we do know that the 50-day moving average is a typical area of support, and it's also the first time that the 50-day moving average is being tested since price broke out way back here. So, price rebound, potential support area here. Do I know that this is necessarily going to be a weekly support? Well, it has one day of the week so far, but how likely is it that this is going to be the weekly low? If price were not already sitting on the 50-day moving average and the 10-week line, I would say that it's fairly low, right? But given that it's already on the 50-day moving average and it has other things that happen to be going on in this particular case, then the odds of this low holding are better if price is going to rebound. Let's find another one, because there's plenty of examples where that might not necessarily be the case. Let's see here. See if we can find a good one. All right, yeah, how about this? This looks like price is coming down towards maybe the 50-day moving average. It's potentially rounding something out over here. Is this the weekly low? Well, we have 2 days in, right? Well, once we have the third day in, then the chances of the weekly low having already been established is greater. And that's where I would start to look to say, okay, does it still have this shape on a Wednesday or a Thursday than on a Monday or a Tuesday? At this point on Monday or Tuesday, maybe this gets a breakout from this little zone over here, right? Like price came down to this, then it rallied, then it started to come down, and now it's right around where I put that red line. But if price came down like this, broke out, and then did a U-turn and undercut yesterday's low and Monday's low, it could establish a new weekly low without taking out the pattern. So until we get later in the week, I'm not comfortable with this being a significant point, even though it could be a weekly low if we're looking at a weekly chart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And then on a daily, it looks like it's knocking its head on the 21 as resistance, right?
Yes. So that would be another breakthrough area.
Okay.
right? And maybe it gets through. Maybe it does what YMAB was doing, right? YMAB was knocking on the 50, and so far it knocked on the 50 over here, over here. So far it knocked on it and poked through it today. We'll see how price closes.
Yeah. When do you go to a monthly? Because I'm curious to hear that you're using also monthly within the multi-time frame. Because, I mean, O'Neill, Cancelim, IBD, they tend to, like I said before, go for a weekly and then from there dive deeper into the shorter time frames. So I'm curious to see, hear where the monthly kicks in.
The monthly kicks in. Here's how I like to use the monthly. Remember a week or two back when we were looking at ARQT?
Yeah.
Do you remember why I decided to exit this position? Or part of the reason why? Part of the reason why was because price was getting to a monthly resistance zone.
Right.
Whenever I'm looking at a chart, I like to find both the pattern that's there presently, right? So if we come over here to the daily and let's turn off the annotations and let's come back over to this. I'm able to spot that, hey, price is had a very strong move. It's pulling back. I believe this was a high type flag. We could take the measurement, but pretty sure it was. And it's pulling back towards the 50-day moving average, and it's tightening up right over here. So I want to try to find a way in, and I end up buying that breakout. Now, when I'm looking to see, well, where could price go, I'm always looking to the left on the chart, right? And so price was starting to move. There's resistance back here. Well, if this is a high type flag and price is starting to break out, then price should be able to pop right through there, no problem, and maybe even get to about 15.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the market environment? What's the market environment doing?
Yeah, sure.
And is this the type of market where price is likely to break out and go on a run, or is it where we're more likely to have some choppy action?
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get the lone wolf that'll just go and lead the market higher. Is this the stock that's going to do it? And why do you believe it so? This is where this starts to get into understanding the story of the stock, or what's your conviction or viewpoint in this thing. For me, this is a biotech stock. I don't know a whole lot about this particular name. I don't have the kind of conviction that say like Darren's had it in Lunar, where he's studying the fundamentals and the company and the news and the CEO and those kinds of things. What do I know about this one? I know that it passed my screens. I know that it's setting up in the pattern that I like to trade, that I've seen historically move. I know that it's given me a proper reward to risk. I know that it has the proper price action and volume profile, so I can construct a trade around that. So when it gets to this breakout level and it starts to get to an area where there's all this resistance back here, and I need to ask myself, is this one of those leaders that could, get through the barrier of the market where I want to keep on holding this thing? Well, I don't have that level of conviction, so I'll take my 20-25% and call it a day on this one. And that's where looking to the left and seeing all this resistance, not just back here, but all this too up here that it would still need to contend with. That's where that kind of thinking gets to. If in a different scenario, let's say none of this was here and price was breaking out, then yeah, I probably would have held some. Or if it was a different market environment where the market's breaking out to fresh highs, there's plenty of other stocks breaking out in earnest, there's plenty of other biotechs that are also setting up and breaking out, and this one's breaking out, yeah, I probably would have given it the benefit of the doubt and not held the full position, but rather than selling the last bit into strength over here, I probably would have held.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Yeah, and so that was a quick little session there on Technical Tuesday for multi-timeframe analysis. Any final thoughts or comments?
I've never thought about it that way. I'm gonna have to start looking at things differently, obviously.
You never looked at it which way?
Going, out to the monthly, down to 30 minutes. I mean, I look at a weekly and a daily, and that's more or less the time frames I use.
Mm-hmm.
But that you have to find, or that ideally you have to find confluence on at least 2 time frames. It's something else which I've never considered.
And the way that I find that it helps me, Alberto, is that it helps to refine my list even more. So let's say that there's 5-6 stocks that I've narrowed the list down to, and I'm not sure which one I want to buy, but I set alerts on all of them, and let's say that they all start popping off at the same time. It's like, well, maybe I'll just buy them all. Or maybe I'll buy whichever one happened to pop off first, and if other ones start popping off, well, this one popped off first, so that's the one that I bought, and the other ones, forget about it. The way that I found this to help me refine is by saying, okay, am I able to spot a pattern over here? Well, when I bought this one, I saw that it was pulling back towards the 10-week line, and it was starting to find support around the 10-week line, right? So this is the week of May 25th, and May 25th is right over here, right? So it had already started to consolidate right around there, and it broke out on Thursday, right? So at one point, this weekly bar was down here. So I'm looking at that and seeing what it's doing over here, and this low here, that's a Wednesday. So because this bar is a Wednesday, right? Well, remember earlier when we spoke about weekly bars and how if we're going to look at a weekly chart and say, could this be the weekly low? If we're looking at it on a Wednesday, a Thursday, or a Friday, you're much more likely for this to be a weekly support area than if it's on a Monday or a Tuesday. So I buy this breaking out on a Thursday, and as it's breaking out, that really solidifies this weekly low even more. And I see the pattern developing as it's pulling back over here, right? I don't know if it's going to break out or not, but I set my order. I see this pattern developing on the daily and it tightening up over here. But I'm also able to see the same pattern pulling back and tightening up over here on the 30-minute time frame. And because I have all three of them working in tandem together, that's also a part of what gives me the confidence, and also able to give me the type of reward to risk that I'm looking for.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. like I say, I'm going to have to rethink how I look at things.
All right. Well, if you have additional questions later on as you're thinking through, please reach out. Let me know.
Okay. Many thanks, Mike.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, guys. We'll wrap things up. Thanks for coming, and I will see you next time. I'll see you in the chat.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.